It is not just a maritime disaster. It is a question that has never been answered. How could a 31,000-ton cargo fortress, advertised as the indestructible lifeline between Florida and Puerto Rico, collapse into a darkness deeper than the Titanic in a matter of minutes? Why did a system designed to defy the rage of the North Atlantic surrender to a lag in data transmission? And more importantly, why did 33 souls become the first victims of the very confidence they trusted? But that is only the surface. Behind the moment the radar blip simply ceased to exist, lies another story less told, but equally dangerous, about the illusion of control, the fatal gap between a digital screen and the real sky, and a chain of small errors merging into history. Why did it all happen in the hurricane season of 2015, and what actually killed the SS El Faro? The Category 4 wins the rogue waves or the human element. Stay tuned, because the truth about the last voice from the bridge is unlike any story you know. September 29th of 2015. The sun over Jacksonville, Florida was not just bright. It was blinding, casting a golden halo over the industrial ballet of the port. The SS El Faro sat at the dock, a 790-foot cathedral of American steel. She was a Rokon vessel, a massive hybrid beast designed to swallow hundreds of shipping containers and automobiles, delivering everything from groceries to brand new cars to the people of Puerto Rico. To the dock workers loading the final crates, she looked invincible. Her hull was a wall of orange and white, towering over the water like a skyscraper laid on its side. Inside the atmosphere was professional warm and routine. The smell of strong coffee and diesel filled the air. There was no sense of doom here, only the comfortable rhythm of men and women who had made this run 100 times before. Captain Michael Davidson, a veteran mariner with a reputation for precision, stood on the bridge. He studied the digital charts with the calm confidence of a man who believed he knew the ocean better than it knew itself. The plan was simple: a straight shot southeast, a routine delivery. The weather reports showed a tropical storm named Joaquin wandering aimlessly in the Atlantic, a disorganized cluster of clouds that posed no real threat to a ship of this magnitude. Davidson plotted a course that would thread the needle, bypassing the rough water while maintaining speed. It was a logical, efficient decision based on the best data money could buy. But as the heavy mooring lines were cast off, splashing into the harbor water, the 40-year-old boilers deep within the ship's belly let out a subtle, rhythmic groan. The sound of tired iron lungs breathing hard against a fight they were too old to win. As the El Faro pushed out into the open sea, the mood on board was almost serene. The crew, a tight-knit family of 33, settled into their shifts. In the mess hall, they joked about shore leave and emailed their families. The electric lights hummed with a steady, reassuring warmth. The stabilizers cut through the Atlantic swell, making the massive vessel feel as steady as a concrete building. They were insulated from the world outside by layers of steel and glass wrapped in the cozy illusion that modern engineering had finally tamed the wild variable of the sea. Throughout the day of September 30th, the data flowed into the bridge, the Bon Voyage system. A sophisticated weather tracking program delivered color-coded maps showing the storm's predicted path. Davidson saw the angry red blotch of Joaquin, but his screen told him it was miles away, tracking safely to the north. He believed he was flanking the enemy, slipping past its defenses before it could react. He wrote emails home, confident professional, assuring everyone that the weather was looking good. The officers stared at the digital map, trusting the pixels on the screen, unaware that the data was 6 hours old, and that in the real world the storm had already turned south, hunting them with a predatory intelligence the satellites had failed to see. Night fell, and the ocean began to change. The comfortable hum of the ship was replaced by a deeper vibration. The waves previously obedient began to reach up, testing the height of the hull. The golden dream of a routine voyage was beginning to fray at the edges, but the confidence remained. They were on a Titan. They had the technology. They had the captain. As the sun vanished completely, the El Faro sailed past the point of no return. The warm lights of the bridge glowed in the encroaching darkness, a beacon of civilization in a widening void. The crew went to sleep, or started their night watch, believing in the steel beneath their feet. They did not feel the barometric pressure dropping like a stone in a well, signaling that the ocean was no longer water, but a monster inhaling specifically to blow their house down. It is the morning of October 1st, but there is no sunrise. There is only a shifting wall of gray water and white foam. The world outside the bridge windows has dissolved into a screaming centrifuge. The SS El Faro is no longer a cathedral. She is a toy in a washing machine. Captain Davidson is gripping the console rail. The digital map still shows the storm to the north, but the reality is hammering against the glass with the force of a train collision. They are not flanking the hurricane. They are inside the eye wall of Joaquin. The wind speed hits 100 miles per hour. The waves are 40 feet high, buildings of water that rise up block out the sky and collapse onto the bow with a sound like a bomb detonating. The ship is listing. Gravity is no longer a constant. It is an enemy. The floor tilts 15 degrees to the right. Coffee cups, binders, and chairs slide across the deck, piling up against the bulkhead. The crew is fighting to stand their boots, slipping on the polished linoleum. Then, the betrayal happens. At 6:13 a.m., the ship takes a violent roll. Deep in the bowels of the vessel, the heavy oil in the sump tank sloshes away from the intake pipe. As the chief engineer reaches for a reset button to stabilize the pressure, the main turbine sucks in a pocket of air instead of oil, and the heart of the El Faro stops beating. Silence. A terrifying mechanical silence swallows the engine room, instantly replaced by the roar of the ocean outside. The ship goes dead stick. Without propulsion, there is no steering. Without steering, the El Faro cannot keep her bow into the waves. She swings broadside, exposing her weakest flank to the full fury of the Atlantic. The false hope flickers. The engineers call the bridge. They say they can fire the boiler back up. They are close. Davidson sounds calm on the voice recorder. He tells the mate, "We're going to be all right." For a fleeting second, the emergency lights hum, and the men believe in the machine. They believe they can restart the heart, but the ocean is faster than their optimism. A scuttle. A cargo hatch on the second deck has blown open. It was a small failure, a latch giving way, but in these conditions, it is a fatal wound. Thousands of gallons of seawater pour into the number 3 hold. The cars inside break loose, smashing against the walls like battering rams. The ship gets heavier. The list deepens. 15 degrees becomes 20. As the captain asks if there's any coffee left in the thermos, the water level in the hold passes the point of no return, silently drowning the very pumps trying to save them. The sensory experience on the bridge is a nightmare of vertigo. The horizon is gone. They are looking straight down into the black water. The alarms are no longer warnings. They are a constant shrieking soundtrack to their own funeral. The wind outside is so loud, it creates a physical pressure in the ears, a vibrating bass note that rattles the teeth. 7:29 a.m. Davidson makes the call. Abandon ship. But the words are hollow. In 40-foot waves and 100-knot winds, launching a lifeboat is physically impossible. The life rafts are not safety devices anymore. They are kites waiting to be blown away. The recording captures the final disintegration. The sound of steel screaming as the hull twists beyond its yield point. The deck is now a wall. The ocean pours into the bridge. The voices lose their professional veneer. There is fear, raw and naked. You hear a helmsman ask for help. You hear Davidson, not as a captain, but as a man trying to comfort him. It's time to come this way. Then the final sound. Not a scream, but a crush. The pressure of the Atlantic implodes the superstructure. The recording stops. The data stream ends. The El Faro is gone. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was heavy. On October 2nd, the sun rose over the Atlantic as if nothing had happened. The sky was a piercing, innocent blue. The waves, which had been mountains only hours before, settled back into a rhythmic, deceitful calm. The ocean had finished its meal and wiped its mouth clean. On the surface, there was no ship. There was no oil slick. There was no debris field stretching to the horizon. There was only the empty, indifferent water. For the families waiting in Jacksonville, this void was worse than a wreck. A wreck is a tragedy. A disappearance is a torture. The United States government launched one of the most sophisticated manhunts in maritime history. The Coast Guard and the Navy scoured an area the size of Indiana. C-130 aircraft flew grid patterns low over the water, their crews staring until their eyes burned, looking for a splash of orange in a universe of blue. They found a survival suit. It was empty. They found a damaged lifeboat. It was empty. The El Faro had not just sunk, she had been erased. To find the truth, the investigators had to leave the world of the living. They had to go where the sun had never touched. The USNS Apache, a specialized fleet ocean tug, arrived on the scene equipped with side-scan sonar and a heavy-duty remotely operated vehicle ROV named Curve 21. The depth was the first enemy. The wreckage lay 15,000 feet down 3 miles of vertical water. At that depth, the pressure is over 6,000 pounds per square inch. It is a crushing, freezing darkness that preserves steel but destroys biology. The Curve 21 began its descent. It was a 3-ton Cyclops, a masterpiece of engineering designed to work in hell. Its cameras beamed a live feed back to the control room on the Apache, where men huddled around monitors watching the particulate matter drift like snow in the spotlight beams. Down, down, down. Past the zone of light, past the zone of life, into the abyssal plain. Then, out of the gloom, a ghost appeared. She was standing upright. The hull of the El Faro loomed out of the darkness, embedded in the silt up to her load line. The orange paint was still bright, preserved by the lack of oxygen, but the violence of the descent was written in the steel. The ship had not floated down gently. She had plummeted like a stone. The impact had ripped the top 2 decks clean off. The navigation bridge, the brain of the ship where Captain Davidson had stood, was missing. The ROV thrusters hummed, kicking up clouds of ancient dust as it began the search for the separated bridge. They found it half a mile away, a twisted cage of metal lying on the ocean floor. This is where the micro-macro zoom broke the hearts of the investigators. The cameras panned over the colossal wreckage of the 30,000-ton vessel, a monument to industrial failure. But then the operator zoomed in. Lying in the mud, perfectly preserved by the cold, were the artifacts of the human beings who had lived there. A shaving kit, a printer, a uniform shirt, a single work boot sat upright in the sediment, laced tight for a shift that would never end, waiting for a foot that had long since dissolved into the sea. But the resurrection was not complete. They needed the voice. They needed the Voyage Data Recorder, VDR, the black box. It was the size of a basketball, a small orange capsule bolted to the mast of the ship. It contained the final 26 hours of audio from the bridge. It was the only witness left alive. Finding it was a feat of needle-in-a-haystack engineering. The mast had snapped off. The VDR could be anywhere in the debris field. It took 2 separate missions months apart. The first search failed. The second search, driven by a refusal to let the ocean keep its secrets, finally spotted it. The footage of the recovery is surreal. The robotic arm of the Curve 21, moving with the delicate precision of a surgeon, reached out into the wreckage. The metal claws closed around the small orange cylinder. Slowly, carefully, the machine began the 3-mile ascent. When that capsule broke the surface of the water dripping and covered in the slime of the deep, it was a triumph of technology. But inside that waterproof shell lay a horror story. NTSB investigators sat in a quiet room in Washington, D.C. to listen. They didn't hear a movie script. They heard the banality of the errors. They heard the coffee being poured. They heard the jokes about the weather. They heard the captain trusting the wrong map. And then they heard the shift. They heard the exact moment the men realized the math didn't work anymore. They heard the alarms. They heard the wind drowning out the orders. They heard the resignation. The resurrection was successful. The machine had brought the dead back to testify. The voice of Captain Davidson, recorded in the final seconds, spoke from the grave, revealing not a villain, but a man trapped by a system that failed him, apologizing to his crew as the walls of water closed in. The recording ended, but in the silence of the listening room, the sound of the ocean's indifference continued to ring in the ears of the living. The investigation into the death of the SS El Faro concluded with a 500-page autopsy report. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic thoroughness. The National Transportation Safety Board identified the critical factors: the reliance on outdated weather data, the loss of propulsion, the captain's decision-making, and the failure of the watertight integrity. New laws were written. Inspection protocols for aging vessels were tightened. The maritime industry, shaken by the loss, stood up and recited its favorite prayer: never again. But if you look past the ink on the paper, if you look past the press conferences and the settlements, you are left with a truth that is much harder to swallow. The El Faro is not just a story about a bad storm or a broken engine. It is a mirror reflecting the fatal arrogance of the modern age. We live in an era of digital hallucination. We have convinced ourselves that because we can model the world on a 4K screen, we control it. We believe that if a satellite says the storm is here, then the storm must obey the pixel. Captain Davidson was a good man, a prudent mariner, but he fell victim to this modern religion. He trusted the delay of the digital map more than the darkening reality outside his window. He believed the simulation until the moment the physical world smashed through the glass. The tragedy of the El Faro is the tragedy of the disconnect. It is the price we pay for believing that technology exempts us from the food chain. 3 miles down, in the eternal midnight of the Atlantic floor, the wreck of the El Faro sits in silence. It is no longer a machine of commerce. It has been reclaimed. The pressure at that depth is so immense that it preserves the ship in a state of suspended animation, a steel ghost frozen in the moment of its violent death. The bridge is gone. The cargo holds are open. The hull is a tomb for 33 souls who went to work on a Tuesday and never came home. Think of the micro details that remain in that darkness. The coffee mug that slid off the console. The unread emails on the server. The work boots laced tight on feet that no longer exist. These objects are not just debris. They are the artifacts of a promise broken. The promise that says, if you follow the rules, if you check the systems, you will be safe. The ocean proved that promise was a lie. The recovery of the Voyage Data Recorder gave the families a form of closure, but it also gave the world a haunting legacy. The audio of those final 26 hours is not just evidence. It is a warning broadcast from the grave. It captures the terrifying transition from competence to helplessness. It reminds us how quickly the comfortable structures of our lives, the electric lights, the heating, the engines, the chain of command can evaporate when nature decides to flex its muscle. So what is the echo? The echo is the realization that our dominance over this planet is fragile. We build unsinkable ships. We build skyscrapers that scrape the clouds. We build walls against the tide. But the SS El Faro reminds us that steel is just processed dirt, and we are just soft biology. The storm named Joaquin is gone, dissipated into the atmosphere years ago. The headlines have faded. The shipping lanes are busy again, filled with newer, bigger ships carrying our cars and our clothes. The golden dream continues. But deep down, in the cold, crushing silence of the outcome, the lesson remains. You can update the software. You can reinforce the hull. You can train the crew. But you can never negotiate with the sea. The ocean does not hate us. It does not love us. It simply waits. And as long as we believe our own maps more than the wind, it will be waiting to feed again. History is not just dates and numbers. It is the collective memory of our species. Thank you for taking the time to remember these events with us. If you have a story or an event you believe deserves to be told, leave it in the comments. We are listening.